Are you ready to start the meeting? I've got 4 p.m.
Okay.
Can do roll call. Mike Karalevic.
Here.
Terry Barris.
Here.
Alan Alexandrovich.
Here.
Okay, first item.
Sure. Okay, we have no visitors. And first thing is to approve the minutes of the August 4th Finance Committee meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It passed. Okay, the second item is, well, the fourth item is business, discussion and recommendation relating to projected 2022 expenditures for best and efficient use of library funds, page 3 through 8.
So probably the first question I have is if we're looking, first we want to look at the 2022 amended budget column, right? As far as what our budget is. Which column is the one that has what our budget is? Which column is the one that has what we've spent through October? Is that the budget year-to-date column?
Yeah, the activity through 12/31/22.
9:30.
Oh, you're looking at 9:30. Okay, the budget that we passed out at the last meeting.
Oh, sure. Yep.
No, you just gave me one through October, so which one are we going to use?
We'll use the one that
The
she
most-
printed out. No, we just had passed out. Which one do you have there?
I got one that says through October.
Yeah. I gave it to you. It's right here.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
you know,
I was looking
Monday,
at this budget report here.
Monday when I sent out the packet, I only had the September 30th was the most recent. Now today I printed out the October 31st.
Okay, excellent.
So the one you're looking at right now is the most recent as far as Fund 15. This will show everything that's
And 16?
16 is a little behind because that usually takes them a little bit longer to post all of those payments we take over every day.
Oh,
Yeah.
but in fact, now, what do we see as the concern? Because I've always thought that what we're concerned with is the amount of fund balance and how is that going to be taken care of.
We were looking at the budget report for the city of Franklin that came out, that we had in the last meeting.
Right.
But I flipped it over and I went down to the bottom and I was looking at, okay, the 2022 amended budget column says we were going to be short $226,000. And so my question was, how are we going to be covering that?
Well, some of that was already planned to be taken out of fund balance.
Right, because they're trying to
When
take
we-
our fund balance down to 100,000, right? They're trying to
When
take
we-
our fund balance down to 100,000, right?
But I don't have anything that says we're going to be taking this amount of the fund balance for this and this amount for this. I was asking for the benefit of the board to say, okay, we have this number that says we're going to be short $6,000. Every penny of that's going to come from different places. Here's where it's going to come from.
Okay, because I completely agree with you. Where is this really coming from? But because it's supposed to be from capital purchases, and you, Jennifer, I'm sorry, the $226,000 as being part of, is that coming out of capital outlays?
Yeah.
That
And-
section, which is 273,000.
Yeah. When I met with Peggy last year to have this conversation about the negative balance, because at that point we were looking at 143,000 in building improvements, because they didn't know, they had just gotten that estimate from IRS industrial roofing
Right.
service. They had just gotten, I wanna clarify, it's not the internal revenue service. Industrial roofing is not the internal revenue service. Industrial roofing service, you know, and that was their, the 143,000 came from them. Not from me, it came from them.
IRS,
Mhm.
okay.
And that was for the EIFS, the building, all that. That was for the roofing, that was for the parking lot.
And I did not bring that capital expenditure thing that we have that goes out 2-3 years.
Oh,
But the 226 is more than covered by the $273,000 in capital outlays.
yeah,
Although, capital outlays.
yeah.
Although, yeah, because it's up here in the financials, I mean, that's, you know, something you just don't see it. And then you and I were talking that somebody made the comment that they're thinking about us picking up a larger share of the parking lot. It's just been brought up, not, nobody's made a decision on it. But in truth, if they do that, we'll get our fund balance right down to 100,000, because we have fund balance in 15 and 16. How do we pull it out of different funds and post it into?
Spends.
Yeah,
The city is responsible for our parking lot.
right.
They can't, the money that's in the fund balance is controlled by the library board. So the
Is it really?
city, I mean, all that money
Yep.
is library board, it's your money, it's not the city's money, it's your money.
We're kind of,
It's not the city's money, it's your money.
we're kind of like a subsidiary
So
of the
they
city.
can't, but they can't tell us how to spend it, so that's really up to the library board and the city to come to some kind of agreement on how that money's gonna be used, which is why I've been trying with the mayor and Peggy.
And they're not gonna be at this meeting because you were gonna try to do that.
This was too
Too-
soon.
okay.
Yeah. But I did ask Peggy for some dates when she and the mayor would be available to meet with us. So,
Well,
but when
it's- oh,
I
go
when I
ahead.
met with her, I went over because originally it was 239,914 that was, you know, coming out of fund balance, but because our reciprocal borrowing numbers came in a little stronger than I had anticipated, and we also got that grant money, it brought it down to 226. It brought it down to 226,470. And when I talked to her and I said, you know, we're not supposed to use fund balance for operations,
That's right.
personnel. I said, so what am I, and so she looked at the number and she said, well, I think, you know, she's like, if you 1,000 in library materials, 35,000 in furniture and fixtures, and then the 10,000 in commuter equipment. She said she thought that would be an okay use of the fund balance if that's, you know. So that's why, that's
And
how it
I
ended
guess
up
the
in the
reason
board.
for me asking to get together was, okay, if 143,000 is not a good number,
Well, yeah.
and for any of these other ones, so we've got a better idea of what our target is.
Yeah.
If we thought that was supposed to be a number because of things that we were going to be doing, but it's not that much, how much can it come down? Because then we can, I think, much more easily communicate to folks, well, we're changing these numbers, that makes it this, so this is what's going to come out of the fund balance, and everybody goes, okay. Like when you make everything tick and tie out of the thing, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, everything. You know, at this point it was like, okay, didn't know.
Yeah.
At this point it was like, okay, didn't know
Yeah.
how that was going to happen, and even procedurally, we haven't really done things where we've paid things out of fund balance before. So just to have an idea of how we're going to do that,
I
I think would be good too.
previous administration, Mark Liberta, you know, when I talked to him about fund balance, when it was starting to get a little high, you know, he said, well, you have an old building. You're gonna need that fund balance because you have an old building. So they weren't concerned. They knew, okay, you're gonna
Right.
need new stuff and that fund balance will be used up. And that was communicated to the Common Council during the budget process. But I think with the changeover in city administration, there's just a different viewpoint, a different, I guess it's kinda like, well, or have a plan on how to use your fund balance.
Yeah. So this budget year-to-date column, so if we just look at capital outlay, that budget year-to-date column, that's 219,104. Is that actual dollars that have been spent?
Budget year to date would be if,
Spent?
budget year to date would be if, dividing everything into 12, and we're in,
And multiply by 10.
Oh, that's all?
yeah. So what you wanna look at is that year to date balance right to the right of it, that 153.89.
Okay, so we've got $123,000 hasn't been spent yet. Furniture and fixtures were a little bit over, so I'm guessing we're done with that. Okay. What about library materials?
I mean, I could tell staff to stop ordering today. and
Just
we'll be
asking.
done.
No.
Yeah, but I think we will go up to,
Asking.
No.
yeah, but I think we will go up to that 14,904.
Don't-
We will use up all of that.
Don't we usually even go over?
Library materials, not too long.
Okay.
No.
But it's not unheard of.
No, but I don't think we will this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I keep a pretty, this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I keep a pretty close eye on those bills coming in. Computer equipment, probably won't spend that whole 86.65 that's left. Cause I ordered 5 laptops, 5 laptops and 1 desktop, and that came to like up that whole.
So we have
But you're saying another 6,000 is going to be spent. Okay.
For computer material, computer equipment. The area where we're not gonna spend all of it, or even come close, is the building improvements, because, I think bids came in a little, bit less than what they had anticipated, and also they haven't done everything that was on the IRS recommendation list. They prioritized and did the things that absolutely had to get, done.
So how much more do you think we're gonna go through in the next couple months?
We have no other projects. We do have, cause I just printed out my budget notes from the system. We didn't do the jacking on the patio. We chose not to do that, so that was $9,000. We did $5,000. They're all done with the gutters. They're done with the exterior insulation finish systems. They're done with the sealants. They're done with the parking lot. So the only things left that we have not spent out of there would be the security system.
And that's 25,000 if I recall?
Mhm.
and that's not likely to happen this year.
Yeah, I mean, I did filled out another capital improvement form for next year, because I wasn't sure if it would be done this year. I have a email to Peggy about that, because we wanna piggyback with the city,
Yeah.
and they're actually kinda getting close to the bid process, it sounds like. So I just wanted to poke her and remind her that we're
Mhm.
over here.
Anything that needs to be spent, or stuff that needs to be paid for the lockers?
No.
Okay.
The locker was paid, and a year's worth of the maintenance was paid with the grant, so yeah, nothing with the lockers.
Okay.
So of the 123,450 that we have,
Okay.
so of the 123,450 that we have available in the capital outlay section, it looks like we're gonna do 14 for library materials, 6 for computers, 20,000, so we're still gonna have 103,450 as we close out the year that we had budgeted for.
Would come out of the fund balance if we
Yeah.
end up short.
There will be a little bit of personnel savings.
Yeah, we're so much through the year that my guess is that there's not anything that is there has been like prorated like 1/12. So there probably isn't going to be, a lot of difference that we're gonna see there.
So yeah, we're,
And in Fund 16, we still have 6,526. Where we didn't spend the 3,000 on software and 50. Will we use the 5,800 on library materials or?
yeah.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
And the software?
The software, well, we used to have to budget for Microsoft licenses, but they do it differently now. And Eric told me we have nothing, I asked Eric, and he's like, no, you won't be paying anything, so
So that's,
Microsoft does the licensing a little different now, so the 3,000 that's there won't be spent,
okay,
And we wouldn't need to budget that in the future?
yeah.
Okay.
super.
I guess you buy a license when you purchase your computer, and it's, I don't know. He's the IT person, so I'm going with him. The volunteer recognition, that one will be used up.
Good.
Maybe an item for discussion at the board meeting would be, we haven't really talked a lot about, or even made any overtures for spending any money out of the donations accounts. And if we would wanna set up some type of a policy for the donations accounts as to, what trigger would cause us to want to go ahead and use that. Well, there's a need to do things that are on this list, so here are things that I'm just thinking out loud here, things that we might say that we would use the donation account for. We would want to make sure that we would want to have the donation account not go any lower than a certain number. I don't know, whatever types of things should be in conversation. There's a fairly decent pile of money that's sitting there, and I don't know if that ends up being a little bit of a rainy day fund for some things, where if we go a little bit over, that's not operational, but it's like, okay, the 6 laptops. But it's like, okay, the 6 laptops. So if there isn't anything that's, any dollars that are restricted to a particular thing.
Yeah, the city does add that into our fund balance.
Donation accounts are in the fund balance,
Mhm.
so we're spending it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't know that.
Well, unless the board, like you said, comes up with a policy just for that.
Well, if it's kind of all melded in where we just see one big number and there's donation dollars and other things, how are we keeping track of what's in the donations account?
Well, we transferred 70,000 from Waterstone. I got that paperwork, and then we would have added to it since we transferred.
We don't see balance sheet accounts, and that would be a balance sheet account. It would be interesting to know if they kept that segregated and are applying interest to that account each month as we bring in investment
Mhm.
income. I'm looking at what you passed out with us, which was the budget through 9/30.
Yeah.
And I see in 16, we have 3,000 in there for software.
Mhm.
So we're gonna take that out?
Mhm.
Okay.
As long as Eric tells me we're good, I'm not gonna spend 3,000.
No.
No,
If he says you're
Yeah.
good and you don't need to spend it. I budgeted in there because we always bought Microsoft licenses before.
Okay. Just, but the city doesn't give us $3,000 extra because we have this expenses here. They kind of say, here's what you're going to get for property taxes and
Right.
landfill sitting, and that's what we're going to get.
Yep.
See, I can see them making an argument that, we just give you this money, and then when you don't spend it, it goes into fund balance. To be able to spend that out of fund balance because that was deemed to be operations, and now we should spend it for operations. I'm not saying they're gonna do that, but I could hear that argument.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think
Well,
we'd roll over and accept it.
a lot of the reason we have that large of a fund balance is because of personnel. Large of a fund balance is because of personnel savings. I mean, it's not all,
Sure.
but,
So somebody quits and you don't hire somebody for a month and a half?
or we had somebody who was very sick
True.
Yeah.
and for probably a good year and a half, 2 years, didn't get a salary, because she had used PTO, so,
Yeah.
but we kept her job open and all that money was just growing. So that's where we got a lot of our fund balance. Not all of it, but it was a lot of
Mhm.
it.
Okay.
Like employee benefits were at 81%, although that's pretty close, 81 and 83.
Yeah.
I could tell you equipment maintenance were done. And I'm looking at Fund 15. And I'm looking at Fund 15.
Yeah.
That one's done. That's not gonna go any higher than 7236.
But none of those would affect fund balance spending.
It wouldn't affect the spending, but it would
Add to fund balance.
add to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. AC repair kinda ate some money, additional money than I had budgeted.
Okay.
So we went over in that.
Would they look at something like that as being part of capital expenditure?
That would be an acceptable, those unexpected.
Yeah. Like, did we have a boiler go here?
Not yet.
Okay. See, sometimes they'll talk about something like that at the school board too, and I
Yeah.
just cross them up. But not a whole boiler. I mean,
No.
that's big money.
And we do have that in the capital improvement plan for replacement, like in 2026 or,
Okay.
because at that point, they would be almost 25 years old, which is pretty. I think the hard thing for the city is that they have these buildings that were all built at the same time and all have issues at the same time and all need all this replacement and maintenance and
Yep.
so,
Yep.
so,
And then looking forward to 2023, that shows we're gonna be short $106,000. Expenses versus revenues. And I'm looking at those numbers from that budget report that we had from our Monday meeting.
oh, from last week?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the 2020 budget was like the last that we knew.
Mhm.
So I don't expect that we're gonna get any more money from the city than that red number that was there. But we're sure we're gonna be short $106,000.
It won't end up being that much because of,
Short $106,000.
it won't end up being that much because of, again, some more personnel savings.
You know, you'd really like to have a budget that gets you closer to zero, but
Well,
is there, we just say, okay, for things that are capital, you know, we've got total capital of $136,000. We grab a bunch of that stuff and we say, well, okay, we're gonna pay that out of the fund balance, such as earmark, you know, building improvements and computer equipment and, you know, a chunk of library materials and say, and furniture and fixtures and say, well, we're gonna go ahead and pay that out of
Good.
fund balance and just know that right away.
The other thing is we have about 9,000, we have about 9,300 sitting at the foundation that we can use for library materials left over from, remember when the Friends transferred their money?
Okay.
Or half of their money to the foundation?
Oh, we
And
should do that.
I've been sitting
Because
on,
as time goes by, we're gonna, that's, oh yeah, we
make a
spend
report
like
at
a
the-
third of it or something like, where are we
Yeah.
supposed to spend?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, so every
So-
year there's a chunk of it coming out.
2 years ago was the last time we spent anything, cause I said, well, I wanted a rainy day,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe next year's the rainy day.
Yeah, because otherwise it's gonna end up like the donations account and just sit there, so if we can, because otherwise it's gonna end up like the donations account and just sit there, so if we can empty those places that, we know we had specified for certain things like library materials anyway, then that would be a good thing to communicate back through.
So that could
But-
cut that.
But isn't this like hidden money that we have? Like that rainy day fund, where if we pull it out, take it and spend it for materials, we've just exposed it to the city. That, oh, you have another $9,000? How nice.
Write the
But
checks.
if they write the check, we don't write the check, we don't have as much library materials.
No, we'd have the same, we just would spend 9,000 less and,
Right.
We would have a budget number where we would spend less. And your comment is then that we don't, and your comment is then that we don't.
The fund balance just grew by 9,000.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do we want that? I mean, I'm not trying to be sneaky here, but kinda am. Does anybody listen to these?
I suppose if somebody was really bored one day. I mean, I know I only have, there's fixed expenses, then there's the expenses that we can lower based on what we want, and that's personnel or capital.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like cut staff or cut library materials. It's a really hard place to be in
Yeah,
because everything else is kind of,
yeah.
I mean,
Because staff and library materials are what bring people to the library.
Mhm.
What gives us our value.
you know, I could say, okay, we're not going to pay our 3M, our Biblioteca, sorry, 3M is now
Yeah.
Biblioteca.
Yeah, we don't,
Yeah.
you know, we're providing a service. For me, it's more a matter of just having an understanding of where are the pools of money that we have, how are we going to be taking money from different places so that everybody kind of understands when they see something where, okay, we have this money here, we're taking this money out, we're going to be spending for here, and everybody's already familiar with the sheet music on it, so that they know this isn't a surprise. We're not, every time something else comes along, oh, now there's another pool of money. No, let's lay this all out as far as, oh, there's another pool of money. No, let's lay this all out as far as, okay, if the donation accounts are in a fund balance, okay, then when it's for some of these things where we end up saying, okay, well, we have $106,000, we're going to be short. If we actually are short $106,000, but it can only be if we're short in those places that the fund balance can pay. That's the issue, right? If we're short because of personnel, oh well, you know. So the fund balance needs to come out, because that's gonna have to be something that we're gonna have to agree on as a board and make that, that's gonna have to be something that we're gonna have to agree on as a board and make that something that happens at a meeting, okay? No different than if we go ahead and make, account changes and things like that.
So are we making a recommendation to the board, other than what we're going to try to do is lay out all these monies and explain the flow, flow chart of some sort?
I think at this point, that's probably the best that we can do, because else is, okay, if we know where things are, and if we decide that we want to have some type of a procedure for pulling things out of the fund balance that are certain things, or understand what the rules are. Okay, when we hit a certain limit, or we get near the end of the year and we still need to have library materials, or we still have other limit, or we get near the end of the year and we still need to have library materials, or we still have other stuff that needs to go on, okay, then that's gonna come out of the fund balance. Should that be something that the library board approves, because we haven't pulled money out of the fund balance before?
If it's really our money, I think the board has and should approve it.
Very similar to just approving the invoices that we pay, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's a very valid point.
So that can be the other thing that gets brought up in the meeting, is that any dollars that are gonna come out of the fund balance will be made visible before that money is transferred. Do we know who all the players are that would be involved then? I mean, it's not like you have a checkbook that says fund balance where you can go ahead and now write it out of the fund balance. You have to actually go to somebody or fill out forms for it. We need.
Well, they've always told me, because I used to do in the budget, when doing the budget process, there is still a transfers from fund balance.
But where
And
can you go? Where can you go look at the fund balance pre-transfer? Like, is this fund balance pre-transfer? Like, it sounds like that's what you're saying. Is it, well, somebody has. If we have to go to somebody who then calculates it, it would be just. I would think it'd be just as easy for those numbers.
It's always on here.
Yeah, it's on the financials, beginning fund balance, ending.
And what came out
Yeah.
on the whole financial statement is what made the difference?
Yeah, but what really messes it up is that at the beginning of the year, we get all the money from the city. So what it looks like is our fund balance just blew up really big, because if we all get it, if we get that money, 1,347,000 in January, and in January we've spent, 50,000. Looks like our fund balance is $1,300,000 larger, and you don't really know where you're at till you get to the end of the year. And the way they do the calculation on the bottom, it's like it always on the bottom. It's like it always looks that way.
Well, I mean, it don't. It's not like we get a pile of money literally. So it's just that.
It's
Now this year, this is what money is coming in from the tax and from taxes, etc.
journal
Now-
entries, yeah.
Yeah, and now your big number.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really kind of hard to know where our fund. Well, really, it's not. I guess if we say we got $1,347,000, our fund balance grew by $1,347,000. But that's not where we're going to end up at the end of the. But that's not where we're going to end up at the end of the year, and it's
Right.
deceiving to people who aren't used to looking at financial statements.
Like,
Well, like most people on the
hard.
board, when I first looked at it, it was. How can that be? This doesn't make sense. Yet I had to figure out what they're doing. Makes sense. Yet I had to figure out what they're doing.
So this is your allowance for this year.
Right.
Right,
I
it
got,
is.
this isn't
Yeah.
the money. This is a piece of paper that says what your allowance is for this year.
So the two things I wrote down here is we should have some kind of flow chart to show how the money is moving in and out of fund balance, and what are the legitimate, account numbers. It almost always falls in capital outlay, some kind of approval process for spending out of fund balance. And from what I see, those are the two key items that we've got here so far.
I agree.
Okay.
Is there something we should do though to, say before we, to get, someone with the city financial people to say, well, this is what we're thinking about, is this clear to you, is this?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, that's
And-
kind of
and
what
you
we
were
were.
trying to do that.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is setting up
Yeah.
a meeting with Peggy and the mayor,
Right,
trying to talk about fund balance and. Yeah, I mean, like you said, if they make us, well, they can't make you pay for a parking lot. But if they said, we want you to pay $450,000 for the parking lot, that would obliterate our fund balance. All the stuff that I have on my little capital improvement plan, to do, but couldn't get done, because everything would go into a parking lot, which is the city's responsibility in the first place.
Right. That's why
well,
I'm concerned about how much power do they really have, and what about how much power do they really have, and what is the mayor thinking? The mayor, I don't know that he's an accountant.
No, he's not.
So when he's looking at some of the stuff, he goes, well, just have them pay for the parking lot, $450,000. Then we'll bring that fund balance down. You can't do that. Their board has to approve that.
Right.
And he says they'll approve it, or they won't be on the board next year.
which board is this?
Us.
The library
Oh, I
board.
see what you mean,
Yeah.
I got you.
The mayor appoints us. We kind of serve at his.
Well, we're pretty far into it, because you can't, you can't say, well, in theory, I suppose people could be, he doesn't interview them about their views on these various issues.
No, but-
So you really can't.
And that's where being clear about, okay, we provide you X number of dollars, this does not include you, okay, we provide you X number of dollars, this does not include you being required to do A, B, C, D. Right, doesn't require you to pay for cutting the grass, plowing the snow, repaving the parking lot, planting new trees, any of that type of stuff. That's anything that's peripheral, building in good shape, and all of the mechanicals working. Okay, that's what these dollars are for. And so that's a key thing when we're talking about fund balance. Okay. Let's say, okay, so this doesn't include this, right? And it doesn't include this, and it doesn't include this, so that we're clear that, well, no one's going to come to us. Clear that, well, no one's going to come to us for that, because that's not what the expectation is for the
Yeah.
fund balance. No, the city itself has its own thing where it says, okay, if we have to do something with paving or things like that, we'll do it, whether it's the fire department or the police department. We'll do it, whether it's the fire department or the police department or any of that. We'll take care of that. Okay.
Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
good to get that from.
Yeah, because our separate, somewhat separate governance, that we've got our own governing body on this, what is, I suppose, it's a city department, but it has to have this separate governing body.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it does seem
And
to.
that separate governing body has all the power over
Yeah.
how the money gets spent.
Yeah, and in general, you would think that then we don't take on any additional responsibility that any other city.
It's like, okay, if you have now you have a gap because the city says, well, we don't pay for it. It's like, well, we can't afford to pay for it. So then the parking lot just goes into disrepair after 10 years. Just,
Well, I suppose the city departments who have a separate facility, that's in there. They have capital. They have capital. Something on their separate department books, or their part of the budget will say, well, then, if we have to do repaving, that's part of your allocated expense, but it doesn't mean you have to, like fundraise or something like that. So that's my end assumption. So that's my end assumption on how this all works.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm beyond assuming. You know, we're talking big dollars here. We can't. I would rather have it from somebody that, no, you don't have to worry about these things. Good. You know, because we've got plenty to worry about. We're really not, like you had said, if everybody's got that thing for, okay, well, if you need to do this, then you go ahead and budget for it, and then the money will follow. But that's what has to happen.
Yeah, that would be
Right.
those things would be something that would come out of the. Yeah, that would be
Right.
those things would be something that would come out of the. I don't know how to put this, but you know, that those kinds of things, you assume we would be treated like any other department that has their own facilities of one kind or another. They're not just in City Hall. So I'm assuming. If the again, fire station needs the driveway redone, or the police department needs needs new asphalt on it, and so forth, I'm assuming would be handled the same way for us as it would be for them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, anything else we need to go over?
So that's that sidebar about getting some clarification on any big dollar things that the city would take care of would be really helpful in any meeting that you have with the city. It's just like something, you know, we don't have to pay for this, right? Get it from the horse's mouth. Because we are removed from how a lot of that other stuff works, right? There probably is a lot more communication financially on all the other stuff where they're talking about, you know, City Hall, the fire department, or the police department, where, you know, all the stuff that's related to the things that are going on there. You know, if there's this umbrella thing that says, oh, then when we have things like parking lot thing that says, oh, then when we have things like parking lot repair and landscaping, all these types of things, that's in this separate thing over here. I would just feel more comfortable knowing that this is stuff that we don't have to deal with or think about. So for planning on some projects for some stuff, we know we don't have to spend money on something else.
It's kind of like if they would say to us, you're responsible for anything that, once you walk in the door, anything in the building, that's what you're responsible for, which may be replacing an air conditioning, heating unit, the boiler, heating unit, the boiler, some big dollar items.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not going to be responsible for anything that's outside of the building. And now we get into the question, okay, the air conditioning and heater are on the roof. Is that outside the building? Seriously, let's get it clear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, if it's I mean, you'll see these kinds of things. Well, like it's not the definitions, like the insurance for it or something like that. Whose insurance policy should it be on?
Yeah.
If we have a separate one from the city, I don't think we do.
Mhm.
Well, that gets in that other part that we seem to have this problem that can develop because of, again, this sort of semi-independent governing, that then they think, well, their board handles this, so they don't have to be in the loop about something that's citywide. To be in the loop about something that's citywide, so that's part of the same issue that we have to. I guess we've had to work our way back on some of that over these last couple of years. Yeah, that came up when you were before the city council recently. About like there's stuff that doesn't show up on the
Yeah, our department doesn't show up on the city budget.
Yeah,
Oh,
when,
yeah.
when they go over the city budget, you know,
Yeah.
the library stuff doesn't show
Yeah.
up there. So it's not like they're voting on anything relative.
Like, in general, the number.
Right, that would be consistent, but if it gets to be, you're not hearing about what's going on in the during the course of the year. You have
But
to
part
watch
of
out
the
for that.
reason I give those presentations is so that they see how the money's being spent,
Oh,
and
sure.
I think they
And
should
managed.
see,
Mhm.
even in the budget book, even
sure.
though
Yeah.
they don't have control over it, they should see it.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they're not gonna understand what I talk about when I say, I have no money for personnel, and they're like, but look at your fund balance.
Yeah.
Okay,
Adjourn.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.